In 2009, Pfizer paid $2.3 billion in criminal fines. It remains the largest healthcare fraud settlement in American history. The company pleaded guilty to misbranding a drug with the intent to defraud and mislead physicians and consumers. 4 executives faced criminal charges. But here's the thing. The drug in question had already generated $11 billion in revenue. The fine was large enough to make headlines, but small enough to be a rounding error. And Pfizer is just one name on a very long list. This is about the lies that made billions, the bodies that piled up quietly, and the system that let it all happen. In 1996, Purdue Pharma launched OxyContin with a promise that changed pain management forever. They told doctors the risk of addiction was less than 1%. Sales reps blanketed the country with this message, backed by glossy brochures and funded seminars. Doctors prescribed it freely. Patients trusted it. By 2001, OxyContin was a blockbuster, raking in over $1 billion a year. The problem? The addiction claim was never backed by solid science. It was based on a misinterpreted 5-sentence letter to the editor in a medical journal from 1980. By the time Purdue admitted in court that they had misled doctors, hundreds of thousands of Americans were already addicted. The opioid crisis had begun. Purdue paid over $8 billion in settlements, but the Sackler family, who owned the company, walked away with their wealth largely intact. Merck's painkiller Vioxx was approved in 1999 and marketed as a safer alternative to traditional anti-inflammatories. It became a massive success. At its peak, over 2 million people were taking it. But internal emails later revealed that Merck knew, as early as 1997, that Vioxx significantly increased the risk of heart attacks and strokes. They didn't pull the drug until 2004. By then, the FDA estimated Vioxx had caused between 88,000 and 139,000 heart attacks, and as many as 55,000 deaths. Merck set aside nearly $5 billion to settle lawsuits. No executives went to jail. The drug had already made over $11 billion in sales. In 2008, internal documents from Wyeth, the maker of hormone replacement drugs, revealed a systematic ghostwriting operation. The company hired medical writing firms to draft articles promoting their drugs, then paid prominent doctors to sign their names as authors. These papers were published in respected medical journals and used to influence prescribing habits. Wyeth wasn't alone. Court documents have shown that Merck, Pfizer, and others used similar tactics. The studies looked independent, but they were marketing materials dressed up as science. Doctors trusted them because they appeared in peer-reviewed journals. Patients suffered because the risks were downplayed and the benefits were overstated. The practice continues today, just harder to trace. In the early 2000s, GlaxoSmithKline began marketing the antidepressant Paxil for a newly promoted condition called social anxiety disorder. The company funded awareness campaigns, patient advocacy groups, and educational materials for doctors. Suddenly, shyness became a medical problem with a pharmaceutical solution. Sales exploded. But critics pointed out that the condition had existed in diagnostic manuals for years without much attention. It wasn't until a drug company had a product to sell that it became a widespread concern. This strategy, sometimes called disease-mongering, has been repeated with restless leg syndrome, pre-diabetes, low testosterone, and more. The pattern is always the same. Create concern, offer a solution, reap the profits. Johnson & Johnson's antipsychotic drug, Risperdal, was approved to treat schizophrenia in adults. But internal documents showed the company aggressively marketed it for unapproved uses, including dementia in elderly patients and behavioral problems in children. The company paid doctors to promote the drug, funded misleading studies, and hid data showing it could cause serious side effects like diabetes and stroke. In elderly dementia patients, it increased the risk of death. In young boys, it caused a condition called gynecomastia, or breast growth, which led to thousands of lawsuits. Johnson & Johnson paid over $2 billion in criminal and civil fines in 2013, but continued to deny wrongdoing. The drug had made over $30 billion in sales. Pharmaceutical companies fund most of the clinical trials that determine whether their drugs are safe and effective. This creates an obvious conflict of interest. And the manipulation is well documented. Companies have been caught cherry-picking data, stopping trials early when results look good, burying studies that show harm, and even changing primary endpoints after the trial is over. In one case, a 2008 analysis found that 94% of studies funded by drug companies showed positive results for their product, compared to just 50% of independently funded studies. The numbers don't lie, but the studies often do. And because the FDA relies heavily on company-submitted data, dangerous drugs still make it to market. Since 2000, pharmaceutical companies have paid over $50 billion in fines for fraud, kickbacks, and false claims. That sounds like accountability, but the math tells a different story. These fines are almost always a fraction of the revenue generated by the misconduct. Pfizer's $2.3 billion fine for Bextra, the drug made billions more. Johnson & Johnson's penalties for Risperdal, a small slice of $30 billion in sales. And because these settlements rarely require companies to admit fault, they protect executives from personal liability. The message is clear. Lie, make billions, pay the fine, repeat. The system punishes the crime just enough to look like justice, but not enough to stop the behavior. These aren't isolated incidents. They're part of a pattern that spans decades, companies, and continents. The names change, but the playbook stays the same. Maximize profits, minimize transparency, and when you get caught, settle without admitting guilt. The biggest lie might be that any of this has really changed. Drop a comment if you think these fines should come with jail time. And if you want to see how deep the money trail goes, the next video breaks down exactly where pharmaceutical lobbying dollars go and who's really calling the shots in Washington.